Well, hello and welcome back to the OTCM workshop for the first time in quite a while. I'm Chris, and in this video, for the first time in even longer than the time since the last video, we're going to be taking a look at my new 00 gauge exhibition layout, A Dreary Tuesday in the Dearne Valley. We're going to be taking a look at updates on it from the last video, which was a really long time ago. As you can see from the fact there's trains sat on track, there's been quite a bit of progress happened since then. So it's going to be quite an exciting video, hopefully charting progress to date. So during the course of last year, that was 2022, I made really good progress, ploughed through much of the summer, got a load of stuff done on the layout, really successful with it. As I say, really good progress. I was really pleased with how things were going. During September, I had to put this layout aside so I could dig bottomwork sidings back out of its storage cupboard. Main reason for doing that was that I needed to get it ready to take out on the road. So we took bottomwork sidings, which is essentially this layout's little brother. Have a look at some of our other videos. We've got some footage of it on there, fully scenic and quite an interesting little shunting layout. We took that out to the Hornby magazine show, Great Electric Train show in Milton Keynes, and also took it to the Southampton Model Railway Club show in Portsmouth. Both really successful weekends, really enjoyable time. Reminded us why we like tramping around the country, taking layouts with us and all the work it involves. So from that perspective, really good to be back on the exhibition circuit after COVID. Really satisfying to chat to a few people who had a real interest in the layout and the local area and that sort of thing. So yeah, really good, and obviously looking forward to getting this layout out on the road. So what we're going to do, let's take a trip back to catch up where we were from the last video. We had the fiddle yard almost complete. When I say almost, there was still the control panel to wire the indication LEDs up. So what we're going to do, let's take a look inside the fiddle yard control panel, take a look at what's going on with the wiring, then take a look at the fiddle yard itself in its completed state, and then we'll come back and take a look at the work that's been going on the scenic section.
So if we take a look inside the control panel, let's have a look at what we've got going on here. First thing you see is it's a complete rat's nest of wires. I've done my best to keep things in some sort of logical order, but it's pretty much impossible when you've got so many wires going to different ends of the control panel and needing to cross over each other, etc, etc. I've also needed to keep the wires long enough so you can get the top open just to get in for access. It's all been designed so that the rear screws, which are here and here, can be inverted, and the lid can be screwed to the top of the control panel, even though the control panel lid is upside down. So all the blue wires running up to the switches control the points. That was all in place when I did the last video, as were the orange wires, which provide the feed for the common on the point motors. So they all run off that rail of copper clad that runs along the top there. That's now been put into a different place compared to where it was before, but all is good. That was just part of the transfer across from the old lid to the new lid. What I've really been adding is all the red and black wires plus the greens. So each point has 2 LEDs, one to indicate which way it's set in each direction, so 2 in total for each one. 24 different points that have all got those attached to them, so that's 48 LEDs. And what I've had to do is link across and daisy chain between each common point or each common anode on the LEDs and link them all across and all the way through. So obviously a lot of soldering going on there, a lot of slightly messy, very short wire connections which are hard to strip the ends of, just a general faff. On the other leg of every LED, we've got a resistor soldered on, which obviously controls the voltage getting to it. And then from the resistor, I've soldered a red or black wire, red and black, one each side for each point, just to help distinguish the wires. And they run back through these 3 umbilical cords back into the control boards, which if I swing around, you can see are all screwed into place on the screw terminals that run along here. I obviously didn't film this because it would have been incredibly boring watching me trying to screw those in. Obviously I made life hard for myself by mounting the control boards in the control panel right underneath that front ledge, so I made it a right pain in the arse to get my screwdriver in and the wires in. Couldn't see what I was doing with the holes, so it's probably taken me 10 times longer than it needed to. There we go. I've also made a slight amendment from the previous layout in that the two switches which control the points on the right hand curve coming out the fiddle yard to operate the crossover there, I've moved those and mounted them in the the end of the control panel. Main reason for that being that it completely ruined the aesthetic of the control panel top, which we'll come on to in a moment. I've done LED indications for those as well. You can see those just to the right of the switches and running off, and they run in their own little separate loom, which is tucked underneath the edge of the box here and drops down into this control panel section here. So all in all, there's a lot going on in there. It all works, which I'm really pleased with. There's a ginormous amount of soldering gone into that. It's been a real test of willpower to get through it all. Felt like it was never going to finish at some points. Now it's done, it's well worth the effort, and I'm really pleased I did it. So let's take a look at what it looks like closed up. Up on the fiddle yard, I've fitted these nice flush fit slide brackets. These are just screwed through the 9mm frame here, screwed through here. Need to put a bit of wood on the inside just to strengthen the connections on the back of the control panel, but all good. So what happens now is the control panel just slides down, drops straight into place on the front of the fiddle yard, I should say, and is then in place, and a lovely tidy fit. So that's it, everything's put together. The custom engraved top panel is screwed onto the control box. As you can see, inner and outer tracks are separate. The idea is that the operator on the left will use the inside one and the operator on the right will use the outside one. You can see the LED showing the route indication. Let's take a closer look and see how that all works. So in close up you can see that FlexGenix, who I bought the original control box purely by chance from, and it was very convenient I did, because they do custom engraving as well and were super helpful when it came to sorting out the top covering for the control box. What they've done is, into the plastic top surface, they've flush mounted the LEDs at a slightly lower level so that across the top is all smooth, and then the LEDs shine through unpainted holes in that. The sections where the track are filled in with white paint. All the flick switches have the nuts hidden below the surface, or recessed below the surface, so they're super smart. And then all we need to do is flick it, you hear the control panel go in the background, point motor go in the background, and there we go. So same applies all the way around. So we can set the route up so that it's got the route set via the outer track all the way around. Just need to change that one and we'll be ready to go. Originally I planned on putting the switches that control the crossover on the end curve as part of the front, as I said earlier. They were going to be mounted here, but it completely spoiled the aesthetics of the whole panel. So I'm really pleased I've moved them down to the side here. That's it in a really logical place, and I've also got the LED indication on those as well. That is all ready to go on there for connecting up to the end board when that's plugged on. Obviously not doing anything at the moment because I haven't got them attached. Other than that, really smart, looks really professional, really happy with how that looks. I think it adds something. It certainly looks tidier than my own efforts would have done. Really pleased I spent what wasn't a huge amount of money on getting that engraved, rather than persevering with the crap job I was doing trying to draw my own track plan into the top. So that is the fiddle yard now actually finally done, rather than the done it was before, where I still had a load of jobs outstanding to do on it. It is now absolutely done. Every single bit works. All the control panel and control wires are in place. So there's nothing left to do with this. I can now box this up, rack it and store it, and focus on the rest of the layout, of which we've got several bits still to do. So on the scenic section, most of the track is laid. It comes to a halt just before the ends, where it will go out onto the fiddle yard curves. That's because I haven't loaded the track on those yet, so I want to make sure that everything aligns. You can see that there's a point there pointing towards a hole of oblivion. There is a reason for that. I need to pop a bit of wood in place, basically, to take that track across the end of the board. Anyone who's been following the story of this layout through all the videos we've done to date might notice that a few things have changed since the first video in how we're looking at the layout and how things are aligned. One of the reasons for that is I decided to make operation a bit more interesting. It would be good to make the sidings at the back exchange sidings with industrial lines for the steelworks, rather than having them just as interchange lines between BR and electric services on BR. So what I've done is I've added this crossover and this set of points. So what this does is it takes the 3 sidings that are there, it takes them down into one track, which will then carry on into the end curve and run off into its own fiddle yard, which will be a portrayal of one small part of the steelworks. The idea is that the main entrance to the steelworks, where all the big trains go in, will still be connected to the main lines, and it will be just off scene, so the signal will be at this end of the layout that controls that. Yeah, this will just be a relatively small industrial line. The original idea was that this point would serve a small cripple siding. I'm having to rethink about that at the moment. So as we carry on up the layout, we've got the 3 sidings at the rear and the 2 main lines at the front, and they run all the way along the course of the layout. You get a bit of an idea of how long everything is from the size of the rakes or wagons in there. It helps, especially if I don't put my hand in the way. And as we come through the centre of the layout, we've got a trailing crossover on the main lines, nice long trailing crossover, and then the sidings narrow down through a 3-way point into a single lead that leads into the sidings. If I just swing around, you see a nice gentle radius across that crossover in particular, but also across the 3-way, which is not too sharp either. At the rear, I decided it would be interesting to add a check rail onto that siding. That's the sharpest curve on the layout, and I thought it would be an interesting scenic detail just to bang that in. So how I did that was I removed the sleepers from the track, or from every 4th sleeper, replaced that with a set of copper clad sleepers, and then I was able to solder both the running rails to those and an extra rail, which I've simply run down the inside of the track. As we carry on up the layout, across the next postboard joint, got another 3-way point here. The left hand one of those will run off into the sort of industrial head shunt, potentially a cut off old industrial line. The centre road is the sort of BR loco release, and then in another change from the original plan, I've rebuilt the what was a single point leading into the sidings as a trailing connection. I thought that would limit operation quite a lot, with the sidings becoming exchange sidings rather than just interchange sidings. Thought it'd probably be more appropriate to add a facing connection. So what I've done is added a single slip. It's quite an interesting build, this. Really pleased with how it's come out. Definitely not perfect. I need to extend some of the sleepers and things like that, but on the whole it's pretty good. So just taking a look at the single slip, you can see it's a far gentler radius than would be the case if it was a Pico slip, which is about 2-foot radius. This is more like 4-foot radius, and it leads into a 4-foot radius point that provides the facing connection from the line coming in from the right hand side. That would probably be the down main in reality. So in terms of scenery, I've been blanking out where I see various different features fitting in terms of the geography of the area and the plan. What I've come up with is that there will be a road overbridge at this end, so that will cover the 2 main lines. The head shunt will stop before it gets to it. As such, I've got the raised ground in the foreground. That needs to be higher than that. And then what I'd like to do is, in the real area, there was actually a drive that led down to Cortonwood Colliery, which came off that road right by where it crossed the railway. So what I'd quite like to do is run that road across here and then just take it off at the front, so it will drop down slightly, drop off the front at an angle, and then go off scene. And then there'll be a girder bridge goes across the line here, and then something will happen at the rear. I'm not 100% sure yet. That's still in my mind. So as we come along, I think there'll be a stream here, which would be the stream that's running alongside the railway on the real thing. And then what I see that doing is going into a culvert here, and it will just vanish off scene for a while. As we come along, I see there being a few small buildings in this kind of area, potentially a siding kickback off the sort of remnants of the industrial line. Could even be a small loco shed there, depending on if it sits right with the overall balance of buildings. And then as we'll carry along, there's definitely going to be some sort of car parking area here, a couple of sort of
grim industrial 1950s office buildings that were so typical of sort of colliery and steelworks areas, that sort of thing. And then we'll carry it along. I think I'm going to abandon the idea of the line heading off at the rear. It makes things too complicated, doesn't look quite right in my eye. And then what I've been thinking about is where these exchange sidings are, to make things even more interesting, is that there'll be a loading facility at the very left-hand end. So at this end, to hide the track going off scene, I've been thinking what would look really good is to have a conveyor tower here at the front, and that would take a conveyor across the top of the track to another conveyor tower here, which would be then going off to feed coal into the steelworks. And what I thought would look really good is if it had a loading bunker of some nature here, which would cover the line heading into the steelworks. And what I'll do is I'll extend this siding that was going to be the cripple siding, so that runs through the loading bunker. This one acts as a bypass line and heads across the back. Sticking with that idea, the rear line then would be the exit track from the bunker. And what I can see happening as you come up is that there would be a weighbridge of some nature here. So what would happen is an industrial loco would bring the train out under the loading bunker really slowly as it's loaded up, run it across stop-start across the weighbridge, and then it will run up through the freeway point, up the up the industrial head shunt, and then propel the wagons back down through the sidings and into one of these two roads, where either the industrial loco can leave the train for BR to come and pick up and it can depart the sidings, or it could be picked up by a different industrial loco and taken off into steelworks if it was being loaded with coal or coke, depending on what I go with as the final option, and taken into steelworks for internal use. I'm also really keen that the stream reappears at the back, so it'll come out of its culvert and it'll run along the very rear of the sidings. I've got the dipped baseboards there because it's always intended to have the stream running along there. I think that's a really nice scenic detail, and it will look quite grim and nice. And then along the back, I think in low relief there'll be some industrial buildings related with the steelworks or coking plant that is served by the loading bunker. I'll just extend those out in a very careful way that means it's not too obvious that they're low relief, and they can just bring out some raised detail along the back of the layout, hide the joint between the layout and the back scene. And then as the line gets further to the right and further away from the steelworks, the idea is that it'll get sort of gradually more rural, sort of the buildings will get replaced by hedges, with some grim, bleak industrial buildings and some sort of overgrown grassland, scrubland, that kind of thing, all very washed out. So all the point work is hand built, so it's all built from strips of copperclad onto which I've soldered Woodhead rail in code 75 to the desired layout I want. All of these have been done freehand. I haven't used the proper template, which is mainly being lazy, partly because I would use Templot for it to design the point templates, which is a great bit of software. Unfortunately, I've got an Apple PC and Templot doesn't run on Apple, so that kind of kiboshes that idea. So I usually just work freehand. I'll pick up in the next video how we go about constructing those and all the component pieces that go into it. And that pretty much brings us up to speed with where we are in terms of layout construction. I'm keen to get started again and start making some really good progress over the next couple of months, hopefully. We're in exhibition season at the moment, so there might be some interesting purchases and things coming along on the lines. You might see from this video, I've treated myself to a rake of the Acura scale MGR hoppers in the original Hop AB configuration. I'll be touching on those a bit more in a later video, comparing them to a budget build I'm doing of some old Hornby models. And then we've still got the Planet Industrials orange and black hoppers that were in the previous video. Look pretty good on the layout. I'm really looking forward to getting the time to do the next three of them, make that up into a rake, plus a load of 21-ton hoppers that I'm going to do in the same livery to make a really good set of matching wagons. So that's really that as far as this video is concerned. I'm going to leave it there. I think it's getting quite long anyway. What we'll do is hopefully it won't be as long before the next video, and we'll touch on some further updates at that point, which should be
probably electronics related, and getting the base scenery in place, cracking on. The layout's already got a couple of invites for sort of 2024, 2025. So I need to make some progress pretty rapidly to get things done. Until the next video, thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed it, please do like, and we'd really appreciate if you could subscribe to the channel. It really helps us, and it's really enjoyable to see how many people do find our videos interesting. So thanks for watching, and until the next one, we'll see you then. Cheers.